Welcome to another episode of the Jobology podcast. And with this episode, school's out for the summer, but we have a teacher with us. Her name is Isabel, and she works at an alternative school. She's going to tell us about parent-teacher relationships and what makes her school special. So without further ado, Isabel. Thank you for being with me today, Isabel.
Thanks for having me.
I really appreciate it. The way we always kind of like to get started, and I kind of mentioned it there at the intro of like what you do, but I always like my guests to kind of explain for everybody. So like if we were to run into each other and I was catching up with you and I was like, hey, what are you doing nowadays? How would you answer that versus like, what's your official job title?
Well, I am an early childhood teacher.
Okay.
I work with nursery and kindergarten aged students. So between 2.5 years old all the way up to 7.
Oh, wow.
I mostly stay in the kindergarten realm.
Sweet.
But I have done both over the last 6 years now. I just finished up my sixth year of teaching.
Nice. Does it seem like it's been 6 years or does it seem like it's been faster?
No, I
longer?
feel like I blink my eyes and then I'm at school again.
Okay. Fair enough. Okay. So then I guess like, I don't know, some people would probably be like, okay, so you're a kindergarten teacher, like as the kind of catch-all, but there's more to it than that.
There's so much more to it. Usually when people hear early childhood teacher, they kind of, it's kind of not frowned upon, but definitely underrated.
Okay.
Most adults feel like not much is going on in kindergarten, but
like,
there's
what are you
so
really
much.
teaching my kid?
Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha. All right. I could see that
Yeah.
being the case. Why? Like, why get into this? Is it something you've always been interested in? Was it something that, you more kind of fell into? Like, why get into teaching in the first place?
I've always really loved school, and I was lucky enough to go to a great elementary school. I had great friends. Some of our teachers weren't always the best, but I've always been a fan of children.
Okay.
Just because they're so genuine and unjaded.
Yeah, that's
yes,
and honest.
Way more tolerable than grown-ups,
Uh-huh.
I think. And it's kind of cheesy, but I was in Girl Scouts and they told us like leave the space that you enter the same or better.
Yeah.
And so I kind of just started applying that when thinking of careers to what career I would have. Like
What's
what
something
could
I
I
can
do
Yeah.
to like give back to the world the
Right.
most at like an exponential rate.
Yeah.
That was physically that you could physically see was making a difference.
It's in the realm of like, oh, I can do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because some people are like, oh, I want to change the world. I'm going to be president. And it's like, that's not going to be me.
Right.
But I can do this.
Totally.
You know what I mean? Like, and so, okay.
Yeah, I'm
sweet.
great at this. It was actually
Nice.
really funny you mentioned that because when I initially interviewed 6 years ago, the ladies who were interviewing me, one of them said, oh, what age group do you work well with? And I thought, well, I don't know. And then I really thought about it and I was like, actually, I could never probably work with teenagers.
No, yeah, that makes sense. And then you kind of, you actually kind of led into my next question perfectly. How do you get the job to become a teacher? Is it something where you just show up and you're like, hey, I'm here to teach, and they go, cool? Or is it like an application process, an interview process? Like, how do you go about getting that job?
So I kind of stumbled upon this job. I had the units you need in order to work in early childhood. You need at least 12 early childhood units.
Okay.
And I happen to have that. And
Okay.
teachers are in high demand. Everybody needs teachers, always, all the time. So I just kind of like happened upon it.
Nice.
And for the school that I work at specifically, they have their own 3-year teacher training program. So I just figured, if I'm going to start working at the school, I might as well join their program.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a little bit of a different style than most traditional schools.
That's
but
what I was going to ask. I was going to say, without, maybe naming the school, because we like to keep, some anonymity going.
Yeah.
How would you like describe, it's not necessarily a traditional school, right?
It's not. Foremost, when I think of our school, oftentimes when you have a traditional school setting, I feel kind of like, not the MO, but like the underlining tone is that we're going to break the spirit of the student so that we can teach them
Yeah.
to do multiple choice questions, to
Right.
be a robot, basically.
Sure.
And at our school, the
Goal.
goal or driving force is we're trying to free the spirit so that whoever the individual is, like their true selves can come out, whether they're meant to be a mathematician or
Sure.
a construction worker or whoever,
Whatever it is.
to help remove the obstacles and hindrances so that they can find their true self.
Gotcha. Kind of not on their own, but with guidance from teachers, but
Yes.
not something that's like thrust upon them. Like,
Yeah.
hey, you're learning
Teaching
this.
to the
This
test.
is this. Right. It's more like, okay, what's your interest? What are you interested in? Let's cultivate that. And
Yep.
kind of, okay, awesome. That's
Yeah.
cool. I like that.
Yeah.
You kind of had mentioned the path a little bit. Is it something you have to have a degree for, or is it something like you just have to have some classes done for? Like how?
So to be a teacher at our schools are worldwide. It's a
Okay.
private school. We just had our centennial
Wow.
in 2020. So it's been a
Nice.
school for 100 years.
Sweet.
And there are many established accredited campuses, and there are even more inspired by
Okay.
schools.
Gotcha.
So definitely having a bachelor's is a head start in the
Cool.
right direction. But for some schools, you don't need a bachelor's to hold a class.
Gotcha. Okay. That makes sense. Something that I find fascinating with all the jobs that I talk to, because I think a lot of times, and I say this every time, but I think a lot of times people don't necessarily know, like, what's your average day kind of look like? Like most people go, oh, I know what a teacher does. They, give tests, they talk to the students, they, what they teach the lessons, but like breaking it down a little bit more, or kind of, putting more of a like, here's what it kind of looks like day to day for me. Like, what time do you start? What time do you end? Do you get breaks? Are you with students all day? What does your average day kind of look like?
So usually in our classrooms, in our early childhood classrooms, there's 2 teachers.
Okay.
And if you are the teacher that is leading for that day, you are probably showing up around 7 a.m. on
Okay.
campus.
Okay. Well, if you want this kind of job, you better be able to get up early. Gotcha.
Early to bed, early
Uh-huh.
to rise
Yep.
kind of thing. I go to bed at 8 o'clock.
Okay. Wow.
when
All right,
when
hey.
we're in rhythm
Gotta
and
do
we're
what you
in
gotta
school,
do.
I go to bed at 8.
Yep.
I'm waking up around 5 or 6.
Okay.
On campus at 7, which is just basically preparing the class for the children to move about seamlessly as
Gotcha.
possible. So, I'm setting the table for our tabletop activity, whatever we're doing, either knitting or chop shop if it's soup day, coloring, sewing, painting is on Mondays.
Okay.
And then
It's like setting up an activity to
setting
start.
up an activity
Okay.
at the
Cool.
table, but also after we have snack together, the children wash their own dishes.
Oh.
So setting up
Neat.
like a washing station. But we begin with outside play, and then we'll come in for circle, which is basically a story through movement.
Okay.
And that happens in the morning.
Okay.
Some teachers do it right away. Some teachers start with a tabletop activity and then move to circle.
Gotcha. So it's not as regimented as like another school per se. It's like
It's
you can kind of have
not.
your like
Freedom to
freedom.
choose.
Gotcha.
They're
Okay.
big on freedom. As long as the curriculum is being met, you
Mhm.
can kind of navigate. But most schools stick with the same
Sure.
time of day doing things.
Well, I mean, that
Um,
also just helps in general. Of like,
right.
hey, I know what's coming. Yeah.
Rhythm
a
is
schedule.
huge.
Mm-hmm.
So then the children can relax too,
Sure.
because if we're doing different activities at different times, it puts them in a disequilibrium, and then they're just gonna flip out. So
I can understand
we
that.
try and stick to rhythm as much as possible.
Okay.
After snack, we'll go for outside play for about an hour and a half,
Wow.
and
Nice.
then come
Man, I wish I
back
had this
for
school.
lunch. So we have lunch together. To me, I'm very grateful that COVID is over.
Oh,
I
yeah.
loved having school outside. And, when you're in early childhood, you're basically helping children to learn how to become human.
Yeah. For
How
sure.
do adults grow up? How do we adult?
I don't know yet.
And
Still trying to figure that out. Yeah.
so it sounds so basic and simple, but every moment of the day that we're with the children is so important,
Mhm.
including mealtime. The co-teacher and I are seated at the table with the children. They each bring their own placemat from home, so it's
Nice.
like a cloth placemat. They've got their water bottle. Most kids are veggies these days.
Interesting.
Miss Isabel eats
Interesting.
meat.
Okay.
So, you know,
Interesting. That
um,
would be something where I'd be like, that must be tough because kids are, traditionally picky and traditionally
yes,
like, I'm not eating my vegetables. So
yes.
that's interesting.
And we usually just tell them, each family knows what's right for them. And,
For them,
because some
yeah.
people are like, oh, you're not supposed to eat this or that. And, but it's beautiful. And we're, you know, modeling the co-teacher and I, how do you sit at a table
Mhm.
with someone else and eat and converse?
And still have
Like, are
manners
you,
and stuff like that.
yeah,
Yeah.
talking over one another? Are
Sure.
you talking with food in your mouth? Like,
Yeah. How do
simple
you
things
active
like that.
listen and eat and
Yeah,
sure. Interesting.
just the basic building
Hmm.
blocks and to
Cool.
build great humans.
That's awesome. I mean, I think that's very important, and that's something that I think can get lost in traditional schooling of, we just all go to a cafeteria, we're all sitting with friends, nobody's really paying, like there's a monitor that kind of walks around, is like, hey, stop doing that, hey, don't do that. But
Yep.
there's not somebody like, hey, do this, you know what I mean? Maybe try this. Yeah.
And then some children leave after lunch. Other children will stay for resting time
Okay.
and then go out to play. And our
Sweet.
school's open from 7:45 to 5
PM.
p.m.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, that's
It's a long day.
yeah. Is it like daycare after school or something
There
like
is.
that? Okay.
And
Gotcha.
some students, even though they're in early childhood, they're on campus from
Yeah.
7:45 right up to 5
Wow.
p.m.
Yeah.
Poor babies,
Just
but
is what I mean.
we
Yeah.
gotta work.
Yeah. Well, that
Mommies and daddies
that's
gotta
the
work.
thing. Yeah. Sometimes, unfortunately, schedules don't allow for pick you
Yeah.
up right at ending day. So it
Right.
is what it is. Okay. Now, with this school not being a traditional school, do you guys have like the traditional hierarchy where you have like principal, vice principal kind of thing? Is it teachers run the show? What does the hierarchy kind of look like at school?
So we have she's not called a principal.
Okay. Interesting.
But she's the administrator of
Okay.
our school.
Sure.
So she's kind of like doing the business side, but there's almost like a council, I want to say.
Okay.
And part of that small group council is a pedagogical director. So the pedagogical director, because we're a non-denominational school, but we have, some beliefs, I
Sure.
guess, within our community. So the pedagogical director works with the administrator to make sure and check in that our lessons are meeting licensed requirements and meeting the style and
Gotcha.
way that we want to bring the curriculum.
Yeah.
So let's say we're doing, for the grades, let's say we're doing a block on India.
Hmm.
You're going to have your historical basic information about India, but maybe the teacher will want to incorporate like field trips to, a local cuisine
Sure.
spot, or
That's cool.
have a parent come in and hold like a festival, like
Okay.
an Indian festival.
Sure.
We just celebrated Diwali,
Wally. That was gonna be my guess.
which was great because it's brought from within the community
Yeah.
by the parents, living in the community.
Yeah.
And
It's more immersive than just reading in a book.
yes,
Absolutely.
you're living it.
Yeah,
It's
sure.
real for us.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah.
I like that. Is it so like I'm assuming like that kind of counsel, it must be like, hey, you have the freedom to do what you want, but kids still got to learn how to read. Kids still, you know what I mean? There's still
Yes.
certain things that have to be met.
Yes.
But okay.
And
so
then
they're-
even department wise, like I've been there for 6 years.
Yeah.
I usually let the ladies who have less years than I usually let them go home early.
Okay, nice. Oh, that's nice.
But, there's definitely been a few days where like I've pulled that card and been like, I need to leave
Yep,
early.
you're staying.
And, I get to walk off
seniority,
campus.
baby.
And
Totally. I understand that.
so it kind of depends.
Okay. And then is that something that you see yourself doing in the future potentially, or are you like, I like working with the kids, I like being in the classroom every day, or is it something where you go, I kind of want to be on that, secret council?
You know, I maybe in the future would be like a pedagogical
Mm-hmm.
director, just because I love the style of teaching.
Nice.
But it's hard to think about leaving early childhood and
Right.
leaving the children because I feel like I've had such a huge impact.
Yeah.
Some of these students, we just had our first grade risers cross the bridge,
Nice.
and
Is that like promotion or
yeah,
graduation
that's
or
their
okay?
graduation from kindergarten to
Gotcha.
first grade. And one of the students, and this has happened, it's been a while, several years now, but one of the students, I've known him since he was 2,
Wow.
and I was his nursery teacher.
Oh.
And I remember him just crying and
Oh.
not even wanting to go into the bathroom.
Yeah.
He like had, and this is common, he had like this bathroom phobia,
Sure.
right? But I've known this kid since he was a babe in arms.
Mm.
And he would cry, cry, cry in nursery. And then I was his kindergarten teacher.
Yeah.
And I told him, okay, come on and just flush the toilet.
Yeah.
Just practice flushing the toilet. And we
See
did
what
that for a
happens.
couple
Right.
months, And then I said, okay, just practice locking the door.
Yeah.
Like you don't even have to go. I'm not gonna,
Sure.
and now he goes all the
Baby
time.
stuff. Yeah.
Totally fine. And his
Nice.
mom at one point, I think it was in Christmas time, and she was like, "How did you do this?" Like
Yeah.
and I just told her like baby steps.
Work
Or
on
just
it.
slowly
Mm-hmm.
get there. First he's standing in the bathroom,
Yeah.
now he's flushing the toilet.
Yeah.
Like no worries,
And then I think, yeah, because I think like, man, a lot of times people go, I want to go for that promotion or I want to move up. But then it's like, man, but then that story right there maybe doesn't happen if you're not, if you're
Yeah.
doing the directing thing, you're
It's
not in there
magic. You're
one on
missing
one.
it.
Yeah. So it's like, what's the trade? Is the trade off worth it or not? So interesting, like, take on that of like, maybe it's not. Maybe it's not worth what's the
Yeah,
trade off kind of? Yeah.
totally.
Okay.
I'm excited this coming year. I think will probably be my most exciting year
Nice.
yet because I'm back doing a position that I started off with. So I'll be leading aftercare.
Okay.
But
Sweet.
it's nice because I'll get to make my own rhythm
Yeah.
with that. And I'll also be doing a parent-child class, which is kind
Interesting.
of like the introductory class. It's an intro to our school, and
Yeah.
I'm excited for that because I think a lot of people new parents sort of have these hangups of like, oh, if I read a certain amount of books or if
Mm-hmm.
I'm this age or if I have this amount of money, like that will make me a good parent.
Yeah.
Then I'll feel ready. Then I can do it,
Yeah.
but it's the child just needs you.
Sure.
Like you just need to be present
Yeah.
and like keep it simple. It
Interesting.
sounds so funny, but like try and keep a rhythm.
Yeah.
Go to sleep at the same time, wake up at the same time,
Yeah.
sit down when
Stability.
you eat. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Interesting.
That's all you need.
Nice. I mean, I think we're kind of getting a little off track here, but I don't mind doing that from time to time. I think we were talking about parenting the other day, me and my fiance, and I was saying something along the lines too of like, everybody has a plan. It doesn't necessarily like you don't know what's going to happen until you're in it, like
Yeah,
until you're going, and then
Totally.
your plan of like, I'm going to be the perfect parent because I'm going to do X, Y, and Z. It's like, well, maybe the kid needs A, B, C, and not X, Y, and Z.
Totally.
So you got to be able to kind of adjust to that. But I think that that's an interesting thing that if people are sending their kids to your school, maybe because they're sending them to this specific school, maybe they're a little more amenable to that and realize like, oh, okay, I need to like be a little more flexible while keeping a schedule or while keeping stability.
Yes.
Interesting.
Even me as a teacher at our school and a parent at our school,
Yeah.
when I first enrolled my daughter, her teacher was saying, hey Isabel, how do you feed her at home, because she will not sit down at mealtime.
Right.
She's just walking around
Doing what you want.
the
Yeah.
classroom. And I said, well, I sit down with her, but her grandmas go around with the plate feeding her all around the house while she plays, and so
Interesting.
even the teacher's child can
Yeah.
need some work.
Hey, that's I totally agree. That's interesting. That's an interesting insight too. if I were starting teaching tomorrow and I was like new at the school, first day, like, okay, here we go. I'm starting out, being a teacher. And I turn to you and I go, hey, Isabel, you've been here for 7 years now. Would you have any piece of advice for me that I could take to school today and make myself have a successful career? Do you have anything?
I would say it's okay to be flexible.
Okay.
And it's nice to have a plan, but don't get too hung up on if the plans change.
Sure.
Being flexible is probably the best piece of advice. And
Yeah.
the more comfortable you're able to be in being flexible and having things not necessarily go according to your lesson plan, the
Right.
better.
Good. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I think that's a good piece of advice, because I think a lot of people come into situations going, all right, again, kind of with the parenting example, like I have to do it this way. This is the way I want to do it, and then you get there and you realize, oh wait, this way that I thought in my head the night before is not going to work. I gotta
Yes.
be able to make changes on the fly, kind of thing.
Totally.
Interesting. All right.
That always cracks me up when we're talking about this. It reminds me of nap time because I'm the nap time teacher.
Nice.
And the
Okay.
other 2 kindergarten rooms send me their problem children
Yes. Yes.
because my kids nap so well.
Mm.
And
Do you have a trick for that?
Do I what?
Do you have a trick for that?
I
Why they
do. My coworkers say I run a tight ship, but I just expect, I'm the grown up.
Sure.
Like I'm the grown up in the room.
Yeah. That's what it is.
It is what it is,
Yep.
So I just and it's rhythm too.
Mhm.
The children from the beginning of the school year, when it's resting time, we're just finishing up lunch. So the children who are staying for resting time, they put away their lunches and go straight to the bathroom.
Yeah.
Because I'm personally of the belief that you should go potty before you go to sleep and
Probably
when
true.
you wake up from sleeping,
Sure.
just in general for grown-ups too.
Yeah.
And because I hold that as something as part of the rhythm,
Right.
they're used to it.
Okay.
But
Sure.
I have had students. I had this student one time. She was homeschooled, and I was telling her, oh, okay, you need to use the restroom before you go. No, I don't want to. And
Yeah.
I was like, well, you have to at least try.
Yeah.
And she just totally
Oh no.
like broke down, and I was like, in my mind, I was like, well, I'm not really used to children telling me no.
Well, yeah, but you got to be flexible.
But I have to be flexible.
That's
And,
right.
I was like, all right, that's fine. Like, like I'm not going to push it. It's not that
Sure.
big of a deal. But most of the children will go along with what
Yeah.
we're doing and saying.
Yeah. It's like setting expectations. Going,
Yeah.
hey, here's the expectation.
Yeah.
It's like, after lunch we do X, then you take a nap, then we
Totally.
go again,
Yep.
But then at least knowing like, okay, that's what's expected of me. That's what I need to do. And you kind
Yes.
of just get into that rhythm.
Yeah.
Okay. Interesting.
But it's because of the freedom. Those are the expectations that I hold in my classroom.
Sure.
But the children also know next door,
Could be doing something else. Sure.
they don't need to do that. So
Interesting. Okay.
yeah, they're
Um,
learning too about what we as grown-ups are bringing
Yeah.
to the table.
They also seem to be learning like flexibility themselves, where it's like,
Yes.
hey, I need to be flexible as a teacher, but it's like, hey, you need to be flexible as a student. Sometimes this teacher says this, sometimes this one says this.
Yep.
You got to be able to go with the flow,
Yeah.
whatever that might be.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. Okay. This is the point in the podcast where I have a couple questions that I came up with that I think are a little more teacher specific. So we'll see, if they are. If they're not, if they don't apply, you can obviously just go next, or whatever,
Okay.
whatever you want to say. But we can always move on if it's something that's doesn't apply or that maybe doesn't fit. But I think as we're going into summer, I know that I personally was a student that was like, okay, summer's here. Everything I just learned, boom, gone. Couldn't even tell you what we learned this year. Is there something that either parents or students, even at kindergarten age, could be doing during summer or at home to kind of maintain and prepare for the next school year?
Always.
Okay.
Yes. In early childhood, I think probably the most important thing is going to be movement.
Okay.
Nice. Especially in the morning and after mealtime.
Yeah.
Movement is huge. It sounds so simple, but things like having your child skip or
Okay.
jump rope or build sandcastles
Yeah.
or practicing. Obviously, people don't have balance beams at home, but practicing their balance
Sure.
is huge. The four lower senses
Okay.
can often help children become prepared
Nice.
to sit in a desk when they reach first grade, or are taking
Upper levels.
direct. Yeah. Coloring.
Okay.
Coloring.
Well, these are all
And
things I could do.
yeah, right. Reading sounds so
Sure.
funny. So maybe in your traditional school, kindergartners are already reading and writing. But if your child is not, don't worry. I read so funny now because I enunciate the letters,
Of course.
because my job is to teach children
Yeah.
how to read and write before that time comes.
Gotcha.
So
Like
I'm
how
really
to form the letters with your
yeah,
mouth so
with
you
your
talk
mouth.
like this.
Yes,
Yeah. Okay.
so they know
Yeah.
when that time comes. Oh yeah, that sounds like these letters.
That's right.
Really
Nice.
simple. I've read to my child every night since she was 2. And she's just now starting to write and read like comfortably on her own.
Right.
But it's that practice of hearing the sounds that's so huge.
Interesting. Yeah, I think that's very important. And I mean, I think those are all things where it's not like, oh yeah, what you need to do is you need to go on field trips and you need to go on vacations here and you have to do, and it's like parents are like, I
Yeah.
can't do all that.
No.
But hey, get a coloring book, read,
It's so simple.
get up and walk around, get
Yep.
up and move. Okay, nice.
And really, parents were overworked, but
Yeah.
somewhere along the line, I heard that if you can afford your child 20 minutes
Mhm.
of undivided attention,
Yeah.
you've just earned yourself like an hour of some free time to go do the dishes
Sure.
or go whatever,
Whatever you
because
want.
you've filled their cup of having that one-on-one with you.
Yeah, and that's very important. Interesting like idea too of like, oh yeah, it's not, you don't need, kids can get overstimulated quickly, so it's not like you got to spend 8 hours with them full on. Okay, what? It's like,
Yeah.
they're like, dude, leave me alone.
They're
Like,
allowed to be bored. It's
yeah,
okay. It's good
okay.
for them.
Sure, exactly. When I was growing up, the parent-teacher relationship was more of like they were co-together. Like the teacher, and my dad seemed to take their side against mine every single time. I don't know what that is,
Same.
but hey, whatever. But nowadays it seems like almost it's parent and kid versus teacher, instead of the parent teacher versus kid. Not versus, maybe that's not the right word, but you get what I'm saying. What does the parent-teacher relationship look like nowadays?
You are touching on a trend right now. That is not, I'm often talking with my older colleagues about how, when I was a kid,
Uh-huh.
the adult was just right.
Yeah.
That's what they said was law.
Yep.
And, nowadays, especially with COVID, I will say COVID kind of like pushed this even more so.
Interesting.
The parents nowadays are always asking their kid, do you want this? What about that? What
Sure.
do you want for dinner? All this stuff. And the child is becoming so overwhelmed
Yeah.
with, I don't know.
Yeah, I gotta make all these
I
decisions
have
now.
to choose.
Yeah.
Like, we've
Yeah.
barely made it to school and you've already asked me, how was breakfast? What am I going to do today?
Yeah.
What do I want for dinner?
What do I want to wear? Yeah.
You're putting your parental responsibilities on a small human who just is not there.
Yeah, they don't have the mental capacity for that.
So I would say, parents, take your power back.
Okay.
Trust the teacher.
Yeah.
Trust the teacher.
That's what I was-
that we know what we're doing.
Right.
And
Well, and there's no incentive for you to just make up things about
You
students.
know.
Like, what do I get out of it? Nothing.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. If
yeah.
I'm telling you there's a problem, there's probably a problem.
It's a
not
lot of
something I'm
helicopter
making up.
parents,
Okay.
though, nowadays.
Sure.
Nobody wants their kid to fall down.
Yeah.
But guess what? Letting your kid fall down
Yep.
will teach them a whole lot.
Yeah.
And if you can just be there to support them, but like also, to grow yourself.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the parent work that teachers do, parent-student work, oftentimes stems from the work that the parents themselves are working on.
Right.
If the parent was bullied as a child, or if the parent had a hard time with transitions,
Yeah.
That's going
They're
to
gonna like
show
be
up
hypersensitive
in their
to
child.
that. Yeah. Okay.
I
Totally.
had a student who stopped coming this year
Wow.
because she just had so much anxiety about it. And instead of her mom being like, let's keep trying, or
Right.
like, we'll just do a half day, the mom just pulled her out
Yeah.
altogether. And it's unfortunate because now this student will go on to first grade next year and they've missed kindergarten.
Right. Well, and they also then get informed, like they build the thing of like, okay, if I just go, hey, I'm really anxious, I can't do this, my mom's gonna say, okay,
Pull me
cool,
out.
no worries, and
Yeah.
I don't have to do it. Where
Yeah.
it's like, if that was an issue that I had, it would be more of like a conversation, like, okay, well, what about it are you feeling anxious about?
Yep.
Is it the other students? Is it the teacher? Is it what is it? And then you kind of work from there.
Totally.
Interesting. All right. Well, I mean, that's about it that I have for you here. I do like to leave the ending of the podcast for my guests to either, promote something they're doing, charity, small business, cause, or just something that they feel like the listener needs to know. So here's your time.
Well, without speaking on my school specifically, I
Mhm.
guess just in general, for new parents or anyone working with small children, to just remember that they're little,
Mhm.
and they're doing their best, and we're all doing our best,
Yeah.
and to just keep it simple.
Yeah.
Keep it simple. Rhythm is your friend.
Yeah.
When you feel like life is out of sorts, rhythm is what I always come back to.
Nice.
And that will help you carry on.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you for being my guest today. I really appreciate it. It was nice getting a different perspective on schooling than I'm used to, and maybe learning a thing or two where I'm like, oh, I wouldn't have thought that. But thank you for being with me today.
Thanks for having me.
Well, that's it for another episode of the Jobology podcast. And thank you, Isabel, for sharing your story with us. Before I let you guys go, a couple quick reminders. Please make sure you like, subscribe, and follow at Jobology Podcast on all major social media platforms, and comment what jobs you guys would like to see next. Like we say to end every episode, make good choices.